Here's a little bit of theory behind it, okay? So this module is about the hypnotic interview. The purpose of the investigation is to understand what the problem really is. In doing so, you will be asking investigation questions that force your client to retrieve unconscious and known information, both. The very fact of doing this is what allows for trance, unconscious moments, that's what stands for, knots, and conflicting realities to present themselves. So I don't have to seek them out. I just have to ask questions and let them present themselves. Each knot that is untied slowly breaks down the overall problem and frees the client from the negative position. So all that's happening is question, retrieval of information creates a slow breakdown of the problem by repeating that pattern over and over. So the retrieval of information is what creates that inquiry into the self, which creates subconsciousness, which brings forward something else, which I then deal with, which then returns the client back into themselves. That's the pattern that I'm looking for, that I'm trying to create. What that's called in hypnotic terms is fractionation. So fractionation is the idea of asking a client to be conscious and then seek their subconsciousness and then maybe come back to consciousness and then subconscious. And as that pattern deepens, hypnosis is created as a byproduct. Why do people say at the end of the session, oh, I feel amazing, I feel relaxed, I'm laughing? Did you see how Sierra went from like kind of sullen at the beginning to like laughter and joy? That's not because the problem went away, partly it is, but really it's because now she spent a significant time in her subconscious mind. And the experience of subconsciousness gives you that feeling of connection. What's back there? I keep pointing to this, right? Like there's something back there. So like what is happening in fractionation? Does anybody know? I myself have trouble saying what's really happening. So I've been very into the Deepak mode lately. I go through different phases of who I'm interested in, but I want to play this for you because it was so interesting to me about what fractionation is. Can everybody see the YouTube share? Tell me if you hear the volume.
Where does memory come into this?
Good.
Memory is a
Can you
very
hear it?
interesting thing. So,
You've pushed back a lot on the idea that it's stored in the brain, right?
yeah, so let's demonstrate this, okay? What did you have for dinner last night?
I had some sweet potato and veggies, pretty
Oop.
boring.
So when I asked you that question, you spontaneously told me sweet potatoes, veggies. Now, as you are telling me that, do you remember who was with you?
I was alone,
How you
my
was
counter.
alone, you know the room, etc. So that one question triggered sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, right? One question. Now, if I go into your brain, do I find a neural network says I had veggies and whatever?
No,
No.
maybe electrical synapses.
Yeah, electrical synapses, which got triggered when I asked you the question.
Mhm.
Okay. But where was that information before I asked you that question?
Who knows? I don't know.
Okay, good. Now go to the next step. Can you recall anything from your teenage years right now? Just anything.
Yeah. Yep, riding a bike.
You're riding a bike and now you see the image and the scenery. Can you recall anything from your childhood?
Yeah.
So I ask you a question, you recall what you had for dinner, you recall the bicycle from your teenage years, you recall your toys in bedroom, just from asking you the question. But where that information existed, and the answer is it was in a superposition of possibilities. Just like before you observe a particle, it's entangled with all other particles in a superposition possibilities. Where does that superposition of possibilities exist? In pure consciousness. So you go every time you remember something or imagine something, you go to the source of all experience, which is consciousness. Okay, so when people say, where do I go after I die? It's where that veggies were. Okay, you don't go anywhere. You're there now because you could not have a single thought, a single memory, a single thing to imagine without going to the source of all imagination or source of all thought. Now, in spiritual traditions, it's called pure consciousness. And pure consciousness is field of all possibilities. It's a field of uncertainty because, you may not remember exactly what accurately, but you make it up anyway. So it's a field of possibilities. It's a field of uncertainty. It's a field of entanglement, correlation, and it's outside of space-time. You never left that place. So, to a yogi said, where do you go after I die? He says, never left home, And so memory is the key. And before you articulate the memory in yogic traditions called a sanskara, a seed. And it's not only a seed of memory, it's also a seed of imagination. And it's linked to what is called karma. Karma is just the interpretation of a past experience. Nothing good, bad about it. I go to Disney World, you go to Disney World.
I'll share the link with you so you guys can watch the rest of it. Here, I'll do it right now so I don't forget. But I just thought that was like so fascinating about what happens when you ask a question. It's not that you just retrieve the data. It's not that you just retrieve the answer. It's that you're being directed towards the field of pure consciousness, which, as he said so beautifully, is the entanglement, all possibilities. Who knows what the hell it is? I don't. I certainly don't. If I did, I would be a millionaire, I think. I don't know what it is. But I do know that one way that I can help people to get to it or to feel it is just to be curious, just to ask them questions. Because the very fractionation that tests the logic of their answer, which now we're back to Gilles' point about there is actually a logical progression that goes on, even though what we're doing is beyond logic, that itself creates a condition for the appearance of consciousness, which is impersonal. It has nothing to do with the person as an individual. It has to do with them seeking something much larger than that and much more meaningful than that. How are you going to create that in people? I mean, it's not easy. You can do it with ayahuasca, you can do it with, psychedelics, you can do it with meditation. This is an opportunity to do it as a building block, as a scaffolding inside of undoing knots and untying problems. So now you're starting to see like just how much is happening in that session. It looks like a correction. It looks like we're solving a problem. But what's really happening is we're untying a knot, we're letting the consciousness and subconsciousness work together, we're creating connection and rapport, we're embodying subconsciousness ourselves as hypnotists, which creates that mastermind. And as a byproduct of all that, or perhaps as the main job of all that, we're inviting the client to have an experience of connection with the field, whatever you want to call that. The quantum field, the pure consciousness is what Deepak called it. So now we're again answering Sierra's question. Why will it always work? Why is there nothing that stands outside of the realm of what could be solved? Because that's much bigger than me, because that's a much more powerful entity than I am as an individual. So the fractionation is the link to hypnosis. I don't have to force that or create it because the Q&A does it for me. So the investigation should meet the client at their problem because that's the invitation. My technique, if I bring one, is not an invitation. It's an imposition. That's not the same endeavor. The questions create momentum inside of the problem and make it stretchy, make it malleable. Now we're allowing more room to look at it. Now we're allowing perspective. Solution-based questions do not create that. Okay, so have you thought about doing a calendar? That's not an invitation to pure consciousness. That's an invitation to go fuck yourself, lady. Of course I've thought of that. In fact, it's creating a weakening of my interest in consciousness because now I'm feeling pulled towards practical things, which I don't want, me being the client. So instead of helping and instead of problem solving, we want to just dig into the problem because what's behind the problem is what? The field. The field is behind the problem. The field has everything in it. You don't have everything in you. Hate to break it to you. You're special, but you're not that special. Like, you don't have the answer. The field has the answer. If you trust that, MOS, it's fast.